Welcome back to Countercurrents, following up on the smashing success with Alistair Crook. Who better to come in after Alistair Crook than Pepe Escobar? Mi amigo, mi compañero. Yes, Pepe, how you doing, brother?
Or we can go hardcore. Hola, cabrón. ¿Qué tal?
¿Qué tal? or O dia tá lindo, with your Brazilian roots.
Yeah, exactly. But
So-
you are.
Oh my
There's sunshine. I'm sure where you. There's sunshine. Here is 11 p.m.
Yeah, well, this here I'm in Florida. They do call it the Sunshine State. We've had our fair share, though. We got hammered a week ago with a hurricane.
With the hurricane, yes.
Yeah.
Wow, that was pretty hardcore. Wow.
Yeah, it stayed offshore, but the folks out on the barrier islands, they got crushed.
Exactly.
Now, if there's a good news silver lining to it, most of the ones out there on the barrier islands are pretty wealthy. And so they're able to, afford the loss. But there are some that couldn't. And it was really, it wasn't a big rain event, but it was the force of the wind and the water out.
The force of the wind, right? Yeah.
I'm far enough inland. We just got occasional wind gusts, occasional torrential downpours, and no damage. We fared better than the folks are in, say, Gaza, Lebanon.
Well, there's no comparison, Larry. Wow.
Yeah.
Or in Lebanon, or people who live in southern Beirut, which is a very dense, urbanized area, and you have civilian buildings being bombed nonstop.
Well, it appears there's now a growing recognition that Israel is a terrorist state out of control.
Absolutely.
And so let me qualify what I mean. The metric I use, that the number of civilians that are killed or wounded as a result of attacks by a group or state. That's what qualifies, makes you a terrorist. Absolutely. It's one thing if you're killing people wearing a uniform. For example, the United States has always classified the attack on the Marine barracks in Beirut in 1983 as a, quote, terrorist attack.
Terrorist attack, yeah.
Well, it wasn't. It was a military attack. It was an attack on a military target. They have weapons. They can shoot back. And it was, I'm not saying that I was happy about it, but at least one of sort of the hallmarks that we've had of Hezbollah is they tend to attack military targets, or what they would consider a legitimate target of war. Whereas what we've seen out of Israel has just been off the charts, killing civilians right and left without any regard to it.
Hezbollah never attacks civilians because Hezbollah, of course, it's simplifying a lot. Two heads, civilian and military. The military wing and the civilian wing of Hezbollah is a socially minded and communitarian-minded party. They help people. Mm-hmm. They understand. They understand that perfectly. So they will never hit civilians, even enemy civilians. Never.
Well, in fact, that was the point that Alistair made about with the pager attack. That those pagers were largely in the hands of people that were involved with social services, education, healthcare. They weren't military personnel.
And the Israelis know that because Hezbollah, they only communicate via their own fiber optic system. The Israelis, of course, because they have human intelligence in Beirut and in a few points in southern Lebanon, they know that. So they did it on purpose.
Yeah,
they knew that 90-something% of the victims will be civilians.
So let's talk about this. The Iranians finally retaliating for the murder of Ismail Haniyeh.
Ballistic retaliation night. We called it yesterday. It was being celebrated in Indonesia, in Malaysia. It's amazing.
Yeah,
Baghdad, everywhere.
I need to send you some emails so you can read them. It's from there's a group of people. I'm on an email chain, and there are several, I call 5 or 6 hardcore Zionists in there. It's the most delusional nonsense you've ever read. So now they've convinced themselves that Iran has now completely isolated itself, and that the Arab nations are going to join together with Israel to go crush Iran. I mean, this is what they're really.
This is what they actually believe. Right?
These are some of these people are in touch with Gallant and with senior members of the current Israeli government. So we're not talking about just fringe people. We're talking about folks that are wealthy, well connected in the United States, and very well connected in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so correct the record on how Iran right now is being perceived, not just in the Shia world, but in the Sunni world.
All over the lands of Islam, with minimal exceptions, I would say perhaps the wealthy in Saudi Arabia, Emirates, Kuwait, and Bahrain, Sunnis in Bahrain, although Shiites are the majority in Bahrain. Everywhere else in the lands of Islam, the overwhelming majority of the 57 members of the Organization of the Islamic Conference, they were expecting Iran to do what they did yesterday. And they were complaining before that, why are they not acting? Well, it's very cool. I tried talking to Judge Knapp, Larry, but with you, we can even have more time to talk.
Yeah, let's explore that, because I think that's really some great insights about Pezeshkian getting played.
No, he did not get played. He was overruled. Well, first of all, because the Iranian system is Khamenei that coordinates foreign policy. Some stuff is delegated to the presidency, but the absolutely crucial matters, for instance, an operation like this one, it's Khamenei that decides. The problem is it's not a frontal clash, but there's some serious tension between the IRGC, especially the hardcore generals, and Pezeshkian and the people around Pezeshkian, and basically Zarif, his vice president, who is basically, he wants an accommodation with the West since the time he used to hang out with John Kerry. This has not changed. And a lot of people in Iran are also getting very, very, I was told that the Iranian social media this past few days, people are pissed. They were blaming Pezeshkian personally for the murder of Nasrallah. This is extremely serious. So obviously, Khamenei is on social networks. He has a website. He's very active on social networks. And the people around him, he has a very, and it's young people. I visited his website in Tehran years ago, like 10 years ago or so. Now it's probably even more sophisticated. It's a bunch of young people. And they follow all the social networks in the world, and then they translate into Farsi if it's necessary. So Khamenei is aware of what's being talked about, not only in X, but also obviously in the Iranian social networks. So there was a popular pressure, number one, for a response for Haniyeh and now Nasrallah. And there was a groundswell of rage against Pezeshkian personally, in fact. He's weak, he's wimpish, and then he goes out in public and admits, we believed what the Americans told us.
Yeah, that's what I found that astonishing.
Crazy, exactly. Can you imagine a president of Iran? Can you imagine Raisi ever doing something like this? Of course not.
That's what I meant when I said he got played. He comes out and goes,
when you said you got played, you mean he got played by the Americans?
Yes,
absolutely correct.
He was like, my God, they lied to me.
They lied to me. Obviously, they lied to you. They were, they never had any intention of, especially in terms of Gaza, which the Americans do not dictate Gaza policy. Netanyahu and his cabinet of lunatics do.
Yeah.
And obviously the Iranians know that as well. So obviously Khamenei, this time he acted very swiftly. Only 4 days after the assassination of Nasrallah. I'm sure you and our audience remember how people all over the world were extremely dejected this past weekend.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Saturday and Sunday. People were, oh, no, now it's over. The face of the resistance is gone. Hezbollah has crumbled. The whole command structure has been annihilated. That's it. That's the end. No, it's different. First of all, because Hezbollah is not like that. Hezbollah is like the Viet Cong.
Yeah.
you understand exactly what he means, right, Larry? Hezbollah is like the Viet, and they learn lessons from the Viet Cong. And they have sub-commanders who are as well prepared as the commanders. And Nasrallah invested on that for years, in fact. Mm-hmm. And it's fascinating because today something surfaced that it's almost like he knew that he was going to get killed. And Khamenei told him, look, we have very good intel. They're coming after you. And still he did not leave. And Khamenei offered him, okay, come to Iran. And he stayed in Beirut. And he died like a real man. Mm-hmm. And in terms of Shiite cosmology, he died properly as a martyr in the middle of a war, assassinated by the enemy. This is the highest possible honor in the Shiite universe, you know. But he knew it. But, and he also was preparing the people who were going to follow me and the commanders at a very high level. So it was an enormous blow. There's no question about that. But it will take them some time to reorganize, and they will be back, you know, stronger than before, in fact. Well, and the fact that this happened for, just to finish, Larry, sorry. The Iranian reaction happened only 4 days after Nasrallah's assassination, which is a kind of tribute to the power of Nasrallah.
Right.
And even if it was moderate, it was a moderate response, very calibrated. And some of the generals are saying, look, we could have destroyed the Mossad headquarters. We didn't. We prefer not to. We can, but not now. This is a warning.
Yeah.
But they also know that the warnings, that crazy cabinet and Netanyahu, they live in a parallel universe.
Well, let's flesh this out, because
yes,
I think what's happened in the last 24 hours, despite, you know, the previous week was, you know, the Israelis dancing, singing, celebrating, oh, we blew up the pagers and we killed Nasrallah and we killed this IRGC general. Okay. The last 24 hours, Iran launches this ballistic missile attack that the Israelis could not stop, even though they knew it was coming. Exactly. And then an entire platoon, basically, of Israeli special operations forces gets wiped out in southern Lebanon.
56 or 57, is that it?
I thought it was over 40. The number I saw was over 40, 42, 40. So
the latest number I got here is like 50-something.
50-something? It could be.
Yeah.
Okay, dead or wounded. And
is that,
you know, so all of a sudden, you know, the Israeli belief that they had decimated Hezbollah, you got a wake-up call. Hezbollah is, you know, I compared it that Hamas is sort of like a bothersome mosquito, or maybe a room full of bothersome mosquitoes. Hezbollah is killer bees. You know,
definitely.
You know, they'll light you up. So, with respect, talk about the difference, the message that Hezbollah, that Iran sent with its April attack, vice the one that they sent yesterday, and then what is left for them to send in the future.
Well, in the future, they're going to launch 500 missiles. Apparently, the final figure coming from the IRGC in the past few hours is roughly 200 missiles. Okay. Remember that this back and forth related to 400. So now they clarify this around 200 missiles. Most of them ballistic, and a few hypersonics, which are not the hypersonics that the Russians have. It's not a King Zhao. Mm-hmm. It's a hypersonic for part of the trajectory, not the whole trajectory. Right. Still, they're in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Which is quite something. They probably launched, 20 or so, 25 or so, and those reach the targets, especially the 3 air bases, right? So compared to April, this was, they were up a notch, not too much. And when you listen to the RGC generals, which these guys never say anything in public, and suddenly they are so talkative, and even with a slight sense of humor, like, we could have destroyed this, but we didn't. It's just a warning.
Yeah.
And at the same time, they have to be serious because they know that the warning will not be understood once again. And this, Larry, now I want to ask you something, because I think this is extremely serious and can be interpreted as an American declaration of war against Iran.
Mm-hmm.
Jake Sullivan, this is what he said. I'm quoting him. We have made clear that there will be consequences, severe consequences for this attack, and we will work with Israel to make sure that's the case. How do you interpret this, Larry?
Yeah, no, it's a threat. Well, I think it's driven more by the politics of the moment, because the Biden administration's caught. The last thing they want is a war prior to the election, because that feeds into Trump's narrative that these guys are a bunch of crazy warmongers. Trump kept us at peace for 4 years. These guys are putting Americans at risk. On the other hand, there is a lot of sentiment support thinking, oh, here's poor Israel. They got missiled without cause. Now, and here's where Israel's sort of playing it wrong, because they're doing the Ukrainian thing. We shot down every missile. We shot down every one. It didn't cause any damage. Well, if it didn't cause any damage, what's the big deal?
Exactly.
Why should we care if it didn't cause any damage? But so Israel's got to figure out which storyline it wants to run with, as opposed to the lie. And they had their Baghdad Bob moment yesterday, saying we shot everyone down, and everybody could see the damn videos of those. Exactly. Boom, 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 boom. You remember that old video game you used to play where you try to shoot down incoming missiles? That's exactly what it looked like.
Absolutely. Yes.
That's from 30, 40 years ago. But so I see this progression that in April, Iran was simply doing a demonstration. They were they were letting Israel and the West know, look, we can hit you, but we're telling you in advance what we're going to do. We're telling you how we're going to do it. So you're welcome to shoot down what we're going to send you, but we're just showing you that we can do it. And instead of the West drawing a lesson saying, hey, the Iranians actually have a serious capability now, came to the opposite conclusion. Iran sucks. There was a complete failure. Okay, so yesterday, what's the message? Iran lets Washington and Moscow know, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to only hit military targets. But they didn't give them so much advanced warning that but they had enough advanced warning, which is why, the White House and everybody's announcing the Iranians are going to hit, the Iranians are going to launch, because they knew Iran had told them. And again, once again, when it's over, they didn't lay a hand on us. We shot them all down. They fell into empty fields. And, this little Jewish group of guys I was telling you about, they're saying, I told them, I said, no, you can see that, here's the video. Oh, that's just Iranian propaganda. It's video footage from people living in Israel who, the last I checked, are not Iranians. Exactly. They don't welcome the Persians there. So they're in complete denial. And now Israel's poised, saying, okay, you hit us, we're going to hit you back. And we're going to go after oil targets. And Iran said, you come back after us, we're going to be more destructive. So talk about what more destructive means and what Russia's role within this could be.
Well, Russia's role is absolutely crucial. I have to tell you again what I told the judge. The famous Putin rush to the Kremlin slightly before midnight on Monday night for an impromptu, unscheduled, very important security meeting. It was always about Iran, because they are in close touch, especially now that they are about to clinch the comprehensive strategic partnership Chinese style, which also includes military. And military, definitely, because this is something that I heard here, Larry, last year. There was an Iranian delegation last year, in March last year. And one of them told us, look, it was great. The meeting was excellent. And the Iranians said, anything you need from us, just ask. And the Russians reciprocally saying, so this has been going on for a year and a half now.
Mm-hmm.
High-level military exchanges, everything, drones, missiles, etc. Missile technology, of course. Although the Fatah 1 and Fatah 2, they were developed by Iranians themselves, apparently, with no Russian help, let's put it this way.
Mm-hmm.
And they are not totally hypersonic. They are semi-hypersonic. So, and apparently this, according to good intel sources here, yes, Netanyahu was trying to call Putin. And the Russians said, no, he has no time for this phone call. That tells you everything. And what Nebenzia said at the UN, the permanent Russian representative at the UN, he smashed Israel at the UN. He condemned everything, not only the assassination of Nasrallah, the current, okay, it's a little bit too much, but the preamble of Genocide 2.0 against civilians in Lebanon.
Yeah.
So, the split between Israel and Russia was never so, I would say in this past 2-3 years, it's reaching the climax at the moment. Of course, immensely complicated for Putin to navigate. 1 million Russian passport holders living in Israel.
Right.
That's very, very tough. Jewish oligarchs, extremely powerful here. They own banks. They know large companies. Putin has to at least, not antagonize them frontally. And of course, the Zionist lobby in Moscow, it's very, very powerful, still very powerful. So this is extremely complicated, but the level of exasperation from the Kremlin to the Security Council, to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, reaching even Taoist Lavrov personally, tells you that they are already fed up with the whole thing. Well, and on top of it, BRICS, which is one of our, we're going to get there soon, right? How can Russia, the Russian presidency of BRICS, start to organize the philosophical stone, the lineaments of the new multipolar world when we have what's happening in Ukraine and when you have a genocide plus a second war and maybe a third war in West Asia.
Yeah.
And including one of the BRICS members. And touching other BRICS members like Egypt, the Emirates, and Saudi Arabia. So to navigate all this, the complexity is absolutely mind-boggling. I think this explains why especially since last week, there's nothing, there are no news about intra-BRICS discussions. It's like, they are working on the moon, literally, Mm-hmm. I'll try to get something next week, but for this week, they said, look, there's nothing. There are no leaks. They're not saying what they're discussing. So, it's totally opaque. I assume because of the sensitivity of the geopolitical and military situation at the moment on the West Asian front.
I wonder if Russia is sending any back-channel messages to Netanyahu, to the Israelis.
Excellent question.
Saying, for example, number one, we have equipped Iran with S-400 air defense systems, and our personnel are there. Any attack on them will be viewed as an attack on us. Number one,
of course.
Number two,
exactly.
we've had long-standing military relationship in terms of joint exercises with Iran going back at least 5 years, if not longer. So to put to put Israel on notice that any attack on Iran would actually be potentially perceived as an attack on Russia.
Absolutely.
I wonder if that kind of warning
the Chinese would be behind as well.
Yeah. So
because
if that
of the strategic partnership Iran-China. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you think that kind of warning might help convince the Israelis to cool their jets?
It depends. Convince who, Larry? Maybe Netanyahu, who's a wily politician, will get the message, but not the cabinet, and certainly not those ultra fanatics.
Yeah, the Smotrich and Ben Gvir
and these people. Forget it. It's absolutely impossible to even try to talk to these people. But Netanyahu will see the writing on the wall. No question, especially because they have a direct connection with Putin. They can pick up the phone and talk anytime.
Yeah.
Putin doesn't want to talk at the moment. That's different because he is furious with the whole thing, obviously. So the back channels do exist, and the back channels are of the Roman Abramovich kind, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Essentially oligarchs.
Yeah.
And oligarchs that transit between West Asia, Israel, and Russia. Friedman, the head of Alpha Bank, these people, these are back channels. Absolutely.
Well, see,
and obviously here in Russia, they are on a very short leash. Putin told them directly, look, behave while you're here. Behave, invest all your money here. No pussyfooting. I'm watching you, all of you. But it's Larry, it's very complicated. I'm learning all the time here. And for us, it's tough. Because we have access to information to a certain limit, of course. Yeah?
Right.
Even if they trust us. Of course, they trust you. They trust me. We've been here. We talk to diplomats, but it's different, and especially because now it's such a sensitive moment, and all that is taking their attention off the most important thing, which is to have a successful BRICS in Kazan in 3 weeks, and it's tomorrow, literally, and there are final papers. Nothing is signed. Nothing has gone to the leaders yet. You don't have Xi Jinping analyzing what is going to be discussed on the table. It's terrible. The Chinese do these things with years in advance, not 3 or 2 weeks before the summit.
So do we think that? I think a likely scenario is that Israel, in all of its hubris, still they will launch an attack on Iran.
Yes, in the next few days. No?
So it can go one of two ways. If Russia has provided ample air defense to Iran, and that air defense system works to thwart the Israeli attack, basically it's minimal, it's limited, and it's demonstrably a failure, then I think at that point I could see Iran potentially not striking back, but they may feel compelled saying, hey, we warned you that if you attack us, we will strike back. And if they launch immediately, once it's clear that they're going to be attacked, if they launch immediately on Israel, then this time they will destroy Mossad headquarters. They will go for destruction of key sensitive Israeli sites. And so at that point, then we're into a level of escalation. Do you think that would then derail the BRICS summit?
Completely, because this is something that could, it's a possible scenario for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right before the summit. And nobody wants, especially the BRICS, nobody wants this to happen. But considering that they're dealing with an eschatological cult, essentially.
Yeah, no, it's
best to explain the details. And your interview with Alistair was an absolute masterpiece because he made all these connections.
Yeah.
All the way to the relationship between Iran and Hezbollah that they explained very well as well. Very few people in the West have this kind of knowledge on the ground.
Yeah. Well, in fact,
the U.S. think tank land, they have no clue. They haven't even talked to anybody from Hezbollah in their lives. How do they know how they think?
You'd be surprised the number of Americans that are convinced that Iranians are Arabs.
Oh my God.
Dude,
Okay.
I'm not
Yes.
making, I'm talking people with college educations.
With college education. Oof.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I just, that group, I was talking to you about, the Jewish, I call them the Jewish cabal.
Mhm.
One of the guys was talking about, yeah, those Arabs, boy, they're gonna go get this one Arab nation, straighten it out. And I just wrote him back. I said, the Iranians are Persian, and so I said, just the fact that you didn't even know that tells us tons about your lack of information on the area. So it's just outrageous. The other scenario is that if Israel strikes and it is effective, it actually hits and causes damage, then Iran's made it pretty clear that it's going to launch out. And if there's any U.S. involvement, it goes back to your question at the original about Jake Sullivan.
Exactly.
That they'll hit Al Udeid Air Force Base. They will hit any ships that are floating in the area. So this could get out of hand really, really quickly.
Yeah, in a matter of a day or two. Absolutely. The thing, and it comes back to your question, who is reading these signs in Tel Aviv? The only one who might understand these signs is Netanyahu, nobody else. All the other ones are mega fanatics, even more fanatics than he is. And obviously, in terms of self-preservation, he will understand how to read the signs because it involves his self-preservation, which is the only thing that matters to him personally, right? After all, this whole war is about self-preservation as well.
Well, I was just going to say that right now, that Washington has no control.
No, absolutely not. I think it's the consensus. Yeah.
Yeah, Biden's so not only weak, but Washington could control the situation if they stepped in and told Israel, we're cutting you off right now. No more money, no more military equipment. But they're not going to do that before an election because the Israeli lobby would crush them.
Absolutely.
So that's where we're caught in this. We can see this disaster unfolding, and you look for the pressure. Or do you see any other pressure points that could possibly be applied that could keep this thing from spinning out of control?
Well, the Iranians can send a direct message to the Americans, in fact, about the famous Strait of Hormuz gambit. They say, okay, anything that happens, and if you are minimally invested in the next Israeli attack against us, we shut down the Strait of Hormuz, we collapse the international financial system, the pile of derivatives, your economy, everything. And we can do this with, a few minds. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
This is a very powerful message. And obviously, when you talk about that in Iran, they say, we will never do that. This is a horrible threat and all that. But if they will do that to prevent a larger war, they could send the message beforehand, don't get involved, otherwise we'll do that. As for Israel, there's nothing the Iranians can do to apply pressure directly or even indirectly. Because it all depends, as you know, it all depends on Washington.
Of course,
yes, go ahead, please.
Well, I was just going to wonder if Hezbollah steps up at attacks and the Houthis step up their attacks, then all of a sudden forcing Israel to recognize it cannot fight a four-front war.
Or front war.
Yeah. Much less three-front, two, they can't. They don't have the strategic depth. You wonder if, and maybe if they get 2 or 3 more platoons of soldiers killed or wounded in the next 3 days, that might give them pause to say, we can't endure these kinds of losses.
The craziest thing, Larry, is that sensible IDF generals, they know that try a land invasion in southern Lebanon is suicide. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure they told Netanyahu and the cabinet, and they still go for it.
Yeah.
So it's not a military decision. It's obviously a political decision. It's not a military decision. I'm sure these generals are livid. These guys are pros, at least, And some of them, maybe they are less ideological than those settler mentality dementia, So they know a bit about war, actual war. and they're not prepared for an actual war.
Yeah.
It's a killing machine. It's different. Killing machine of unarmed civilians has nothing to do with a professional army.
Right. No, exactly. And that's where that's what they've been good at, killing unarmed civilians. Well, sorry that, now once you go up against Hezbollah, who's actually armed and can fight back in ways that Hamas never could. And, they didn't learn the lesson in 2006. And I maintain Hezbollah now is far, far more capable than they were back in 2006. They didn't have drones. They didn't have drones. They didn't have artillery.
All the training for this past 18 years at least.
Yeah.
So yes, they do have 100,000 missiles of all kinds. They do. This is something that when you go to southern Lebanon and you talk to the people who live in the villages over there, with a smile, they say that they better not try it.
Well, and that I've not been. Describe that terrain for people that have never been there.
Hilly, and perfect for ambushes, which is what happened today. By the way, it was an ambush.
Yeah,
an ambush. And of course, they're scattered villages. All the people who live in these villages armed to their teeth. There are underground tunnels everywhere. So it's a sort of a replica of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, mini Ho Chi Minh trails everywhere. So if you need to be a specialist in this kind of a war in this kind of terrain, which obviously the IDF is not.
Right. Yeah.
And you know the rules of military engagement, Larry. So you know that it is suicide to try something under this condition.
Well, the fact that they suffered that many casualties on just their initial operation.
Exactly.
It'd be one thing if you put in 1,000 guys and had 40 wounded, but that's not what happened. It was 50 guys.
When you look at the larger picture, what I think people all over the global south are puzzled. How can the whole planet become hostage to a bunch of completely crazy, lunatic, scatological, psychopathological individuals like that? It's not only West Asia, because the whole planet feels concerned about that, because this can spiral out of West Asia and involve other parts of the world as well. And if the US steps in, then it becomes a mini world war.
Well, but that's the thing that's taking place that I don't think Americans grasp. That Israel is alienating people in countries that it used to be able to count on for some support. You saw they PNG'd Gutierrez, the Secretary General of the UN.
Yes. He's banned from it.
Yeah. Come here. We're going to arrest you. What is this? They're
everywhere except France, Larry. I'm sorry. I'll give you and our audience the exception. I was reading the French headlines today. I said, it's very hard to believe how they are even more controlled than Capitol Hill controlled by AIPAC. The whole of Paris is controlled. And the whole French media, which is basically the ones that really count, for oligarchs, completely controlled. And the only thing that you read and on YouTube, they replicate IDF and Netanyahu's spin on everything, literally. And in their debate shows, American style, the same thing. There's not a single dissenting voice. So, this tells you everything about where Europe is going.
Of course, Europe.
Well, in fact, Borrell, did you see what Borrell said?
Yeah, oh, yes.
Did you see what he said? He took the cat out of the bag, and the cat was like dancing like this. Look, you know me? Yes, I'm doing this because of my sponsors.
Yeah, he admitted
about Ukraine. Exactly.
Yeah, Ukraine is just it's a piece of toilet paper for cleaning up a mess. That's all it is. Yeah.
Wow, but it's good to, even with a guy with a very low IQ as Borrell, at least to admit this in public. It's a bit too late, nah? He should have said that 2.5 years ago. But at least now we have. Well, now I think we're having admissions every week by Stoltenberg, by Borrell, by von der Leyen, all of them.
Well, and that's because the war in Ukraine is not going well for the.
I love your diplomacy.
They got a few setbacks, shall we say? Which is
when you read a New York Times article, it's inbuilt in the headline already, né? Yeah, there are a few setbacks, but we still can revert the situation.
Yeah, what's your sense within Europe now of the realization that this thing is coming to a rapid end?
Among public opinion, slowly but surely, it's getting there. Even in France. In Germany, very, very slowly. In Italy, in some of the big cities, yes, especially big cities with good universities where there are a lot of academics that are anti-war and anti-Brussels. Yes, but it's a very long-term process because the control of information in Europe is absolutely brutal. I would say it's even more hardcore than in the US.
Yeah,
now, because of all this legislation and extreme pressure by Brussels, the fact that Brussels has unlimited funds, they control virtually every government in every major European capital. They control all these media oligarchs everywhere, from Springer in Germany to the Agnelli Elkan in Italy. Not to mention the French, all of them, including Pavel Durov's very good friend, Xavier Niel. Do you know that the guy who Durov called from jail was Xavier Niel, the guy who owns the free internet provider in France? And a lot of important media as well.
Did he get him out? Or
I wonder. What happened is that Neil interceded directly with Macron. Neil's the type of guy who he picks up the phone. Macron answers immediately and said, "Look, treat him well. He's my friend. He's a friend of France. It's not his fault. It's some Telegram accounts. Let's try to get the judiciary to solve this." And the fact that there was a deal now is obvious because Telegram now is openly boasting that they are cracking down on dodgy accounts. Let's put it this way. And the guy who broke this deal was basically Xavier Niel. Essentially, Zionist, very important.
Yeah, that's sort of the unfortunate thing in this, that on the one hand, the insistence that there is this Zionist control of the media, and people try to, but it ends up being true. It ends up being true.
Work with media. I have 40 years of journalism, so it's not my first rodeo. So after a while, you know how the whole industry works on a transnational level. I have friends in many of these places, and in fact, many of them, they resign in disgust. I had foreign correspondents at Le Monde who preferred to leave because they couldn't stand the whole thing anymore.
Well, I've been trying to battle this. With respect to Iran, the mythology that Iran's the leading sponsor of terrorism. So,
well, it's a very sophisticated campaign, Larry, for decades.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw the piece I did the other day, but I pulled out from the State Department's Bureau of Counterterrorism. Every year they produce the country reports on terrorism. And those are statistics that are collected by the CIA.
I saw it. Yes, I saw it. Yes.
Yeah, and so you look down the list of the groups, the top 10 groups, the most active for the last 5 years. Not a single one of those is a group that's sponsored by Iran, receives
Also
funding by Iran, or training by Iran.
Exactly.
So how do you get to be the greatest sponsor of terrorism when all the terrorism is being carried out by people that you don't sponsor? I mean, that's the first big lie.
The first big lie, because they're masters of spinning narrative and PR campaigns. If you spin this all the time, and if you go blah, blah, blah 24/7, Iran is a sponsor of terrorism, after years, people start to actually believe it.
Yeah.
It's very tawdry, it's very cheap, but it's effective.
Well, the other thing we're seeing is, I think, the current death toll among the Palestinians and now surging among the Lebanese, it is unprecedented. There is no historical period like this since the foundation of Israel. That you've had
have
this.
To go back to Genghis Khan, literally.
Yeah, you've not had this many Palestinians killed by the Israelis. You know, because during like the Second Intifada, the numbers maybe got up to around 3,000. You know, but now we're approaching it's probably in excess of 50,000, if not higher.
If not higher.
And what's it going to take to awaken the outrage among the leaders in the Middle East to finally recognize that this is a bona fide genocide that's going on?
How can you convince Sisi, the little king of Jordan, even MBS or MBZ, that this is beyond unbearable? And because this, you know how these people think, no? They only think in terms of personal power, profit. And in fact, MBS, on the record, if I'm not mistaken, he already said that, no, this is not a priority for me. Gaza, Palestinians, or even how many people get killed is not a priority.
What about Erdogan? I mean, he's talking tougher later, but I keep calling him a hot air balloon.
I agree, Larry. Well, I'm going to Istanbul this weekend, so I can answer your question next time we talk. Definitely, because I have a list of questions for my interlocutors in Istanbul. Okay, is this real this time, or posturing once again? Or he really wants to get into the BRICS and the SCO, because otherwise he's going to be completely marginalized in the integration of Eurasia. And what about Israel? Is going to turn off the tap of the BTC pipeline? Because the BTC pipeline at the end in Ceyhan is where the ship starts in Ceyhan to go to Israel. 40% of Israel's oil. Turn off the tap. Very easy.
Yeah.
He says he's going to do it, but he didn't.
Well, so let me run a scenario by you and get your assessment.
Okay.
Israel hits Iran, and so Iran then will strike back again, only this time more decisively. And part of that will include the destruction of U.S. military bases in eastern Syria, where that have been, pumping oil out of the country as well. It could then conceivably, that could be the final trigger that could lead Erdogan to say, okay, we're cutting the oil off to Israel. If they cut off that oil, then Israel's prospects for sticking in the conflict are good, bad, or terrible?
Terrible. But there's a plan B, Azerbaijan. It's not only Turkey, because this oil is not Turkish. This oil is Azerbaijan. This oil comes from Baku. It's the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline.
Okay.
So you need Azerbaijan to be on board with Turkey. Considering that Azerbaijan is getting closer to Russia, closer and closer, there is a strong possibility Azerbaijanis are going to say yes. But at the same time, the Zionist lobby in Baku is also strong, Larry. So it's very complicated. But it is possible. It is possible.
Yeah, because I think that's the one area of pressure on the oil.
Yes.
That could be applied, that could bring an end to this fighting, force Israel to cut back or stop, without having to actually kill anybody. I mean, we could stop with all the death and destruction.
Exactly.
But I think that's my overly optimistic view, because I think we're headed for a car wreck, and there's, this is Thelma and Louise driving off into the Grand Canyon.
I agree with you, Larry, especially because of this Sullivan quote. The way I interpret it, I don't know if you agree, is that they are trying to set up Iran as provoking the next war.
Oh, yes. No, I fully agree with that. Yeah.
Okay.
Because they're not, the presentation here, again, is that, boy, Iran launched these missiles on Israel for no good reason. And go, no good reason? Good Lord. Mm-hmm. Israel's been on a murdering campaign of civilians, just killing civilians right and left, children, women, and justifying it that it's, they're doing it because they are targets of terrorism. And yet, as I've written repeatedly now, using the Israeli Foreign Ministry's own statistics, the number, if just by the fatalities alone, take October 7th, which was 1,139, with all of the dead Israelis or foreigners at Palestinian hands from August of 2000 through April 2024, that's another 1,425. We're not even at 3,000 total dead. Mm-hmm. And yet Israel justifies killing over 50,000 people.
Exactly.
The lack of proportionality there is they're citing terrorism as the reason they do what they do, when they are in fact the terrorists, as far as I see it.
As far as the absolute majority of the global majority sees it. And still the genocide continues. And now we have over 1,000 killed, already 1,000 killed in Lebanon.
Yeah. Over 1,000. Exactly. I mean, there were some estimates it could have been as high as 2,000 people killed in those apartment buildings that were destroyed.
Exactly. And on the night itself, the night of the Great Retaliation, they were back to bombing suburbs of southern Beirut. It never stops.
Yeah.
So no wonder, the global majority is stunned. Is there any leadership anywhere capable of stopping this? Obviously not. Geopolitical leadership, obviously not. There are some few means of pressure, but not enough. Resistance, yes, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hashd al-Shabi in Iraq, etc., but that's not strong enough. Iran now with missiles gives the impression to people all over the world, oh, finally, now they are sending a message that the Israelis will understand. No, they won't understand. Yeah. They don't want to understand.
Yeah. Well, in fact, they're going after Bashar al-Assad.
Exactly.
They want to kill him too.
They want to kill him too. They were.
So what influence?
Threatened to kill Khamenei. Nah?
So what role can Russia play?
Oof. Once again, coming back to the constraints, Larry, here, and when you start a conversation here about it, the first thing your interlocutor says, "But this is not our war." Mm-hmm. They're right. They have a war here on their borders, and for Russia, this is an existential war, and it's the whole collective West against Russia. So this is their war. But for instance, this afternoon, I was at the Valdai Club. There was a discussion about Lebanon, including an advisor to the president of Lebanon. Excellent guy and all that. But you could tell that for the Russians, this was a distant.
Not our problem.
Exactly. Yeah. You see. And we're talking about the intellectual elite here. And the foreign ministry, you have, of course, Nebenzia, Lavrov, Maria Zakharova virtually every day and all that, but it's just rhetorical.
What about the feeling in Moscow now with respect to the progress in the war in Ukraine?
there's a lull. They see that the mopping up operation in Kursk is proceeding according to the Russian plan, which is slowly but surely, always. And of course, the fall of Ugledar was considered a huge thing here, all across the spectrum. And they said, well, the next is Pokrovsk, and after we take Pokrovsk, there's nothing. It's true. It's just an empty step all the way to Kiev and beyond.
Yeah.
So they are not in a hurry. They are finally, after a few months, relatively optimistic that there can be a breakthrough in the next few months. Let's put it this way. There are even people in the agency saying, "No, this thing is going to end before spring next year." I think this is too optimistic, but they're already, spelling it out. And of course, there is also a lull because everybody's waiting for the presidentials in the U.S.
Well, yeah, because I was just going to say, I wonder if the part of the Russian calculation is, if Trump wins in particular, then this war is going to be over.
Exactly, but there are no illusions certainly among the Security Council, Larry, and people like Medvedev or Patrushev, who's now a direct advisor to Putin. These people have no illusions. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They know that this, and what leaked about the Trump peace plan, they looked at it, they said, this is a joke. So, but obviously it would be a better scenario than if we have the Democrats still in the White House. Obviously, there's no question about that. So that trolling, that Putin trolling at the forum, that we like Kamala.
Oh yeah, well, the vice presidential debate last night, I think, put more nails in Kamala's coffin. That the waltz was so bad. He's getting panned.
This guy doesn't even qualify as a joke, no?
Yeah. He's getting blasted by CNN, by ABC,
even by CNN.
Yeah, all the legacy media. Mm-hmm. All right, my brother. Listen, you're going to be heading off to Turkey, so I know we'll at least get the first report of what you found with the judge.
We can talk. We can talk next week, Larry, about Turkey.
No, absolutely. I'd love to do that. You've been through Istanbul quite a few times. The airport,
quite a few times. When the famous deal was clinched, we were there, Larry, and the Turks. They were talking to us. They said, "We did it. We clinched the deal. It's thanks to us." A few hours later, poof. So pissed because they saw this as a Turkish victory, of course, because they put this summit together.
Yeah. Well, we got. Let's. I'll pray for peace along with you, that we'll see that. While we hope Israel doesn't do something crazy, I fear that they will.
I fear that they will as well.
So,
unfortunately.
Well, listen. Thank you for doing another sit down with Countercurrents. It's
my pleasure.
Building the channel. We're just trying to do one of these a week with prominent, insightful people, which is why we got you. So thanks.
The one with Alistair. This one is wow.
Yeah, well, you match right up there with Alistair. You two, that would be the ideal to get Alistair and you together for dinner.
I would love to do one with Alistair, and I will be also asking questions. Yeah. I love asking him questions.
So we have to bring his wife Asleen along too, because she's
Ashley's great, and she has wonderful on the ground experience in Palestine.
Yeah, she's an intellectual powerhouse in her own right. So
absolutely, yes.
All right, my friend. So hey, if you like this, please subscribe, and thank you for listening. We're signing off. This is Countercurrents.